If you have an ultimatum around technology use of whatever kind, there is no conversation to be had. There's just something that needs to be implemented. Like if I have a rule in my house that devices go off at 8 p.m., for example, then I let my people know devices are going off at 8 p.m. This is the way it's going to happen. And here's what's going to happen if that doesn't happen. And make sure that the thing that happens if it doesn't happen is neutral, effective, implementation oriented, and not moralistic and not punitive and not intended to make them suffer. It's just a neutral. If you can't put your phone in the kitchen by 8 o'clock and turn it off for the night, then I am going to take the phone away, or then you will lose access to the phone for a week, or a day or an hour, or you figure out that kind of stuff yourselves. But then it's like, I'm not going to have this struggle. I'm going to make my life really easy while we live in my house. And if we need to have a discussion about why the rule, what the reasons are, the needs I'm trying to meet, absolutely, of course, we can get into more discussion about how we onboard these kinds of things. But if we just get into that moment of this is the way it needs to work in the house, your choices are to work with me on that or rebel against it. I understand that's going to be in there. Here's why it's that important to me. This has to do with your well-being. This has to do with brain health. This has to do with my electricity bill, whatever it is, right? I understand you're unhappy about it. I understand you don't agree with it. I care about the things you're needing. And I'm not willing to compromise or move on this one point. And I'm going to need you to find a way of working with me on it while you live in my house, while you're a minor, while I'm mom. And while you might not feel it, or while you might not like it, I really want you to understand this is coming from a place of really caring about your well-being and my well-being. Usually kids will understand that. When kids don't understand that, or when kids escalate from there, that usually tells me that there is a deeper issue of lack of trust in the parental authority that needs to be dealt with in a different way and not over the actual boundary. It's getting acted out over this particular boundary, but this isn't where the problem is. The problem is the child doesn't trust the parent to follow through. And that child doesn't have his or her needs or their needs for trust met. And then we need to really pull back a little bit and find out what's happening in the relationship. And in this situation that you've described to me, your son had the ability to bully you into capitulating to him based on using strong emotion. And that's going to be detrimental to both of you. Your child doesn't want to be told what to do and has learned that if he acts out and gets upset and angry, he doesn't have to do something. And we can couch that in a lot of different language, but a young person, and I mean this with dignity and respect, young people need reliable grown-ups who can keep them safe from things that are harmful to them. There's no equality there. This is the part of growing up. As a child, you grow up and you learn how to take responsibility for your well-being. And as you develop certain skills and capacities, your parents hand those back over to you. The goal is, whatever culture you're in, when you're 16, 18, 25, 32, I don't know, whatever culture you want to be in, when you are launched into the world as a grown-up, the things that your parents provided for you as an infant and a little kid who doesn't know the difference between a poisonous berry and a blueberry, for example, that is not an equality thing. When your child is about to eat a poisonous berry, you say no and you take it away. And when they throw a temper tantrum about that, we help them learn how to re-regulate their nervous systems. And we assure them that no wasn't because they're bad, wasn't because they're horrible, wasn't because that we get joy out of sadistically controlling them. We are going to bat for their well-being, and that's what builds trust. Now, if we don't have enough of those experiences where the kid then goes, oh, you just saved me from something, you just saved me from harm. Oh, I see how. And my mind has just gone like in this little rabbit hole over here, which is like the world we live in today with the amount of technology and the amount of access to things that are dangerous. Parenting as a whole, it's so hard, and it's so hard for kids. So I just want to acknowledge, like, you know, if only it were as simple as a poisonous berry where you could say, look, this is a blueberry, this is a, you know, whatever would be a poisonous blueberry. Like, I know it gets more difficult, but the principle being, when an 11-year-old is trying to make a case for equality, and you don't get to tell me what to do, and they want to now use psychologically sounding language and a diagnosis, we're making the situation much more confusing than clearer, I think. Now, then a caveat: I don't know the whole situation. I don't know all the history. I don't have all the data. So don't give your power away to me on this, right? I'm glad it's helpful to just hear it through one frame, but there's probably a lot more complexity going on that I also just want to acknowledge. And we, yeah, I'm not going to have an 11-year-old bully me into like, we get to make equal decisions. We don't make equal decisions. But I want to give that 11-year-old, I want to scaffold his development in a way that he can see a path to having more power. I also don't want to deal with him in a way that he suddenly just feels like he has no rights, he has no power, he has no way out. His only choices are to bully me or submit to me. That's what I'm not wanting to be in. But that's a longer conversation. It's education oriented. It's developmentally appropriate. It's this is, you know, like, here's the job that you and I have together. When you leave the house, I'm going to turn over to you all of these responsibilities where you get to contribute to your well-being. And you know, what's hard with kiddos is that many of them are very motivated by what makes me feel good. And a lot of things that make us feel good or give us a dopamine rush are not actually good for us. And it's hard, but it is part of the job of parents to teach our children to care about more than a thrill, a high, and a rush. They need delay of gratification. They need the ability to self-regulate their emotions. They need the internal capacity to have a feeling, contain a feeling, express a feeling. They need the ability to put their internal states into words to grown-ups who can mirror their words back to them in attuned, kind, empathic ways and help them get to know themselves and manage themselves. And those are all skills that are way out of power struggles and yes and no and rules. And, you know, like, there's an entire context of what that relationship is meant to be that we want to be looking at when we see these kinds of things happening. You should take the parenting course, because I dive into the authoritative use of power that is attuned to the right developmental stage. In that course, we talk about that. You know, the problem is when we've had domination-based, punitive, harsh, demanding types of parenting, it is very, very normal to overcorrect in the other direction. So be really gentle with yourself on that, because what we do is we try to balance out what was too harsh by inadvertently and unintentionally becoming too lenient. And there's a ditch on both sides of that road. Too lenient becomes a form of neglect. Too harsh becomes a form of abuse. And we really want that healthy middle where there's enough structure that a child can relax and feel safe, but not so much structure that they feel completely oppressed and like there's no room for who they are and how they're developing. And then the other thing that's hard is all of those structures keep changing from age to age to age. And then the other thing that's difficult is no child is going through that at exactly the same time. It's not like we can say, oh, we're at 6 years and a half, and this is the time that we switch now for all children, because all children grow and develop in spurts and at different ages. And so it's very, very hard. And what I hear in your question is a lot of care, a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of open-heartedness, a real commitment to caring for what he's needing while trying to figure out where and how to use your authority as a parent in life-affirming ways. I think you're exactly on the right track. I would say the first big piece to work on is the not being scared of his anger anymore. Because when you're no longer afraid of his anger, you're going to have more clarity about what's needed in the moment. He can still be angry. He's ideally, if we could get there, if we could figure out a way to get you there, he needs a mom who can field his anger without getting scared herself. Because right now, your being scared of his anger makes him more powerful than you. And that's actually part of what's dysregulating for him. He needs a grown up that he can, think about. I don't know if people can find this in themselves, but think about the part of you that wants to be able to have a temper tantrum and rage and have a good parent just hold you and tell you it's going to be okay and keep you safe. And they don't shout at you or tell you that your feelings are inappropriate or that they go away, but they also don't get scared of you. Some therapy work of going back and finding out what was scary and what happened to you. What are the echoes that are mapping onto the present for you right now? When have you been overpowered by somebody who's been too angry and too harsh or too, has used their power in ways that has been harmful to you? It's really about detoxing those emotional memories, because I wonder if some of them are echoing and mapping onto these moments. But I think that's something that if you could find a therapist, healer, coach, guide, somebody who could investigate that with you, and find out what's going on in those moments so that you can get more of you online, more of your adult, wise, strong, empowered, loving, soft power, direct, firm, soft power part. She goes offline. She's nowhere to be found in those moments. So I think we want to get you some help first. And I very much would encourage you to do this sort of in the phrase of like in a village, in a community, and not try to do it on your own. Yeah, you want to create some relational containers that are stronger than this sweet 11-year-old who's trying to work some stuff out, and that can actually hold him, where no one person becomes another target and everybody collectively is creating a stronger container with a lot of love and a lot of boundaries. A lot of boundaries. Yeah, loving boundaries.